Hi, I'm Andrew Wasson. Thanks for joining me for my weekly guitar blog. It's April 26th, 2015, and this week we're going to do a lesson covering phrasing with multiple modes. And this week's question was sent in from Keith. He's out in Corpus Christi, Texas, and he wrote in with this email. I read an interview that was done with Paul Gilbert where he said he uses Lydian mode on major chords that are outside of the key signature. And he likes to use the Mixolydian mode on any dominant seventh chords that show up outside of the song's key signature. Could you do a basic explanation on what he's talking about? Is kind of confusing. From Keith in Corpus Christi, Texas, USA. Well, hey, thanks for writing in, Keith. Modes are often thought of as being used within a single modal progression, but when modes are used in jazz or classical or in progressive rock situations to cover more than one modal harmony idea, things can get a little more complicated. So in this lesson, I'm going to run through how the modes of Dorian, Ionian, Lydian, and Mixolydian can be combined to blend a melodic idea across a chord progression that flows through more than one mode within the progression. Well, let's begin with a chord progression that covers a few different modes. We'll analyze it and then we'll work out a melody that can cover the entire progression. So the chords are going to include E minor, A major, a B minor chord is going to be in there, and also a B flat major chord. So here's how all of these chords are going to sound when you put them together in a chord progression. Now, the analysis of this group of chords gives us a modal harmony of E Dorian up front with those first two measures. We're covering E minor chord and we're moving into the A major chord. So E minor, A major, producing E Dorian. That's going to be our scale and our sound that we're going to use for those first two, E minor and A major. Now, next up is the B flat major chord. Now, this thing is out of key. It doesn't fit in the harmony of E Dorian. So when we move into the B flat, we have a non-functioning situation on that B flat chord. And on any kind of non-functioning major situation, you can get away with using Lydian mode. So that's going to be built off the B flat. Very interesting sound, so that's what we're going to do on top of the B flat there. And as we move along in the progression, we come back around into an A major and a B minor chord. Those last two chords, we can just use D major scale, which is the primary key signature anyway. E Dorian as a mode, that's coming out of the scale of D major scale anyway. So the second mode of D major is E Dorian, and that's basically where we're going to go to for catching those last two chords of A major and B minor. We're just kind of traveling back into the key center there. So next, let's hear how a melody line can be built over these chords using each of the scales we've been discussing. In measures 1 and 2, of course, we're going to use the E Dorian mode to cover the E minor and that A major chord. In measure 3, we're going to switch over to B flat Lydian mode to cover the non-functioning B flat major chord. And in measure 4, we're going to cover that A major and B minor using the D major scale. All right, so here's how the melody that I composed sounds when it's played over those changes. Well, let's work out a new set of chord changes that includes the appearance of a non-functioning dominant seventh chord. In this case, we'll be working primarily in the key of A major. Now, our first three measures are going to include the chords of A major, E major, C sharp minor, and in the fourth measure of the progression, that's where we're going to use the non-functioning D dominant seventh chord. Okay, now when the dominant seventh chords are applied like this, they're referred to as a secondary dominant chord, and they're covered using the Mixolydian mode. So first of all, here's how this progression sounds. Now let's go ahead and work out a melodic idea that can cover these chord changes. And the first three measures are pretty straightforward. The changes are just going to move through the sounds of the key signature, which is, of course, A major. However, on that non-functioning D dominant seventh chord, we're going to use the D Mixolydian mode. And that's going to cover the appearance of the dominant seventh D chord. See, Mixolydian is a really unique sound that can really catch the listener's attention against common sounds used in the first three measures there in the A major tonality. It's really a common tonality, of course. But then when we highlight things a little further, that little bit different color on the D dominant seventh, that's when then that Mixolydian sound can really shine there. So here's how the melody that I compose sounds when it gets performed over this set of chord changes. You know, the major scale modes are not only a great way to work out melodies for off-the-wall groups of chord changes like we've just seen. Modes are also a way for us to build really interesting chord changes because of the unique harmonies and the effects that they can produce through both chord extensions and different chord alterations. Studying the associations back and forth between modal melody and harmony will help any guitarist working on this kind of material to create all kinds of very different sounding melodic and harmonic chord progressions when they're composing and arranging music. So if you've never put in the time to develop your modes, I'd highly suggest getting started as soon as possible. It'll change not just your guitar playing and the way you look at the instrument, but it'll change a lot of other ideas with your composing and your arranging of music, as well as your improvising that you do on the guitar. Anyway, that's all the time that I have for today. As always, thanks for watching. Have yourself a great week, and I'll catch up with you next time. Bye for now. If you'd like to learn the modes and really get an understanding how they can be used musically to write songs, play a solo, or compose melody lines, then you're in luck. My ebook, Using the Major Scale Modes, is a comprehensive manuscript outlining exactly how modes are used both in harmony and to compose melodic ideas. Over 50 pages of scale patterns, example progressions, and music theory all create one of the most comprehensive methods on the modes available. Using the Major Scale Modes is available for instant download in the View Our Products area at creativeguitarstudio.com.